Recording in
Thank you.
Don't say.
Have y'all ever seen Star Trek, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, where they go back in time and pick up whales in order to save the Earth, 300 years in the future? Yeah. Scotty. Yeah, Scotty, he's, I think I may have told you this. Scotty, he pops into, in order to get the whales back, they're going to have to transport them in time on their ship, but they've got to have a holding tank on the ship for it. And so he's trying to find the 20th century equivalent of what they call transparent aluminum, which the holding tank for the whales will take 6-inch plexiglass in the 20th century, 1986, but in the 24th century, 23rd century, it will take just 1 inch of this aluminum, transparent aluminum. So they go into this this manufacturing company, and they're talking to the guy there. It's, of course, Scotty. He's acting as a visiting Scottish dignitary, and he tells you, "What if I could show you something that could do the job and only do 1 inch thick?" Well, the guy was interested. He's an engineer, and so he says, "Here's a computer." Now think, Scotty's from the 23rd century, and here he is in 1986. Sits down at the computer and nothing. Computer. And the Dr. McCoy is there with him too. He sees the mouse. He picks it up and hands it to Scotty, and Scotty goes, "Computer." And then the engineer says, "Just use the keyboard." Scotty goes, "The keyboard, how plain." Then proceeds to impact all this graphic design on just using 2 fingers and a keyboard. Anyway, I don't know. I heard computer. The computer recording started. I heard that voice. The Star Trek computer voice. Yeah, I know.
sidebar.
Yeah, we got that. Let's see. Let's get this presentation mode going. Oh, I gotta go. Share first. Share. There we go. Now presentation. Okay, so we're in 2 Samuel chapter 14, verse 25. And you can see where this is going from the very first verse we read today. Now, in all Israel, there was no one to be praised so much for his beauty as Absalom. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. When he cut the hair of his head, or at the end of every year, he used to, when it was heavy on him, he cut it. He weighed the hair of his head, 200 shekels by the king's weight. I didn't go in to find out how much that is. We all know hair is heavy. I think Crystal Gale and golly, that's a lie. They were born to Absalom 3 sons and 1 daughter whose name was Tamar. She was a beautiful woman. Now, the fact that it says a beautiful woman here could mean 2 things: that we passed through quite a bit of time for Absalom to have children and for her to grow up. But what is believed to be, this is an addition of details from a later editor who has put this in, who read the things and found out she was beautiful. But what I'm making a point here is that he had a daughter and he named her Tamar after his sister, the one that was raped. So he honored his beloved sister by it. Or it was just required because maybe. Verse 28. So Absalom lived 2 full years in Jerusalem without coming into the king's presence. Then Absalom sent for Joab to send him to the king, but Joab would not come to him. He sent a 2nd time, but Joab would not come. Then he said to his servants, "Look, Joab's field is next to mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire. I'll get his attention." So Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab arose and went to Absalom at his house and said to him, "Why have your servants set my field on fire?" Absalom answered Joab, "Look, I sent word to you. Come here that I may send you to the king with the question, why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me to be there still. Now let me go into the king's presence. There is guilt in me. Let him kill me." So time-wise, it's been 7 years since the rape. It's been 5 years since his revenge. all that time, Amnon, and it's been 2 years since he's returned. And his thought is, my father can't ignore me. But one of the things I didn't make note of here is you got Joab, who was responsible for bringing Absalom back to begin with. You would think that he would take a more active role in this reconciliation between the two. Well, why? Why do we think? Well, I tell you, last week we started to see, well, not started, but we saw a continuation of Joab's character. We start to see how that plays out. There's a reason he wanted Absalom and David in the same city. Next week on. Then Joab went to the king and told him, and he summoned Absalom. So he came to the king and prostrated himself with his face to the ground before the king. And the king kissed Absalom. So there's a reconciliation, at least from David's point of view and from Absalom's point of view. We think, kind of a forgiveness act going on here. Into chapter 15 now, verse 1. After this, Absalom got himself a chariot and horses, and 50 men to run ahead of him. Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the road into the gate. When anyone brought a suit before the king's judgment, Absalom would call out and say, "From what city are you?" When the person said, "Your servant is of such and such tribe in Israel." See, they use those vague terms too. Absalom would say, "See, your claims are good and right, but there's no one deputed by the king to hear you." Absalom said, moreover, "If only I were judge of the land, then all who had a suit or cause might come to me, and I would give them justice." Whenever people came near to do obeisance to him, he would put out his hand and take hold of them and kiss them. Thus Absalom did to every Israelite who came to the king for judgment. And so Absalom stole the hearts of the people of Israel.
Does this mean that David is not handing out justice? He's not.
Well, look what Absalom does. He goes out and he rises early in the morning before any of the rest of the house does. He goes out to the front of the city.
So he just
to the gate. Yeah. He meets him at the gate, says, "Well, there's no judge, the judge ain't in the city. So, if only there were someone else that could judge, I would make a great judge." Yeah. Well, people are building him up, the most beautiful person in the land. But of course, he's getting a big head. And his hair's growing. At the end of 4 years. So this went on for 4 years. Can you imagine no justice for 4 years? Absalom said to the king, "Please let me go to Hebron and pay the vow that I make to the Lord." Now, remember, Hebron is where the altar still is. Mm-hmm. "For your servant made a vow while I lived in Geshur and Aram. If the Lord will indeed bring me back to Jerusalem, then I will worship the Lord in Hebron." The king said to him, "Go in peace." So he got up and went to Hebron. But Absalom sent secret messengers throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then shout, Absalom has become king at Hebron." Now, remember why Hebron was so important. Like I said, that's where the altar was built. That's where David had that was his first capital. While Saul was still technically in charge of Israel, David's command post was in Hebron. So,
Did David not know this was going on? Did he not know Absalom was sending everybody away and telling lies?
Well, according to this, no, he didn't know. You would think that, after forgiveness and after a reconciliation that he'd want to be around his son all the time. But it said he got chariots and horsemen and all that. So it seems to me like David put him back to work as the king's son. He's going to, you think about the royal family in England, even though they're part of the royal family, they have their different duties that they perform throughout the country there. So
okay.
That's just a westernized example. What's probably the 200 men from Jerusalem went with Absalom. They were invited guests, and they went in their innocence, knowing nothing of the matter. While Absalom was offering the sacrifices, he sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor from his city Gilo. Well, the altar to sacrifices in Hebron. So this is going to be. He talks about he made a vow And that had to do, it says that while he was in Geshur, now we didn't read about any of this before. But what Absalom's saying is he's telling his dad, King David, while I was in Geshur, I made this vow that if I were ever to come back, I would start my sacrifices again in Hebron. Well, I haven't done that yet. I need to go do that. So the conspiracy grew in strength, and the people with Absalom kept increasing. So 4 years of plot had been going on. He returned to Jerusalem. I tell you, Absalom is in it for the long haul, ain't he? So it's 11 years since the rape at this point. Over a decade. A messenger came to David. I need to, before we go further, the reason there's so much animosity from Absalom to David is David didn't do anything to
He didn't punish
him. And that ate Absalom down. So that's what's going on here. So, a messenger came to David saying the hearts of the Israelites have gone after Absalom. So finally, David is told what's going on. Then David said to all his officials who were with him at Jerusalem, remember, 200 of his officials went with Absalom, unbeknownst to what was going on. So whoever's left is there. Get up, let us flee, or there will be no escape for us from Absalom. Hurry, or he will soon overtake us, bring disaster down upon us, and attack the city with the edge of the sword. The king's officials said to the king, your servants are ready to do whatever our lord the king decides. Well, it sounds like you already made a decision, didn't it? They don't want to leave that place. So the king left, followed by all his household, except 10 concubines whom he left behind to look after the house. Yeah, you got to keep the house kept up. The king left, followed by all the people. Now, before I go further, there may be an ulterior motive to David leaving the concubines there, because the law of the land, at least in Jewish law, was that the incoming king took over the concubines. So David may be leaving them there as a peace offering, if you will. But I take it as it says that they were just there to keep the house. The king left, followed by all the people, and they stopped at the last house. They're on their way out of town, and they're stopping at each house saying, hey, king's leaving and he wants us to go with him. Who wants to go? All his officials passed by him, and all the Cherethites and all the Pelethites and all the 600 Gittites who had followed him from Gath passed on before the king. So his own people leave him, but the foreigners are remaining loyal. The ones that have been with him since before he was the full king of Israel. So we get this, we kind of get a precursor or a pre-example of Jesus. People that he trusted leaving, his own people denying. So 19. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, remember he's one of the 30. Why? And he's also Joab's brother. No, I'm sorry, wrong guy. That's or whatever. When you are also coming with us, or why are you also coming with us? Go back, stay with the king. He's talking about the king of Gath. Okay, you were a foreigner and also an exile from your home. You came only yesterday, and shall I today make you wander about with us? While I go wherever I can, go back and take your kinsfolk with you. May the Lord show steadfast love and faithfulness to you. But Ittai answered the king, as the Lord lives and as my Lord the king lives, wherever my Lord the king may be, whether for death or for life, there also your servant. David said to Ittai, go then, march on. So Ittai the Gittite marched on with all his men and all the little ones who were with him. The whole country wept aloud as all the people passed by. The king crossed the Wadi Kidron, that would be the little creek that runs in the Kidron Valley there. And all the people moved on toward the wilderness. Another exodus. So the last remaining loyalists are leaving, not knowing what tomorrow holds. They're just like those in the Exodus. They're taking off. They don't know. They just know that their king is leading them, and they're trusting David. Abiathar, remember he's the priest, and Zadok, he's the other priest, also with all the Levites carrying the ark of the covenant of God. They set down the ark of God until people had all passed out of the city. Then the king said to Zadok, carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and let me see both it and the place where it stays. But if he says, I take no pleasure in you, here I am, let him do to me what seems good to him. The king also said to the priest Zadok, look, go back to the city in peace, you and Abiathar, and with your two sons, Ahimaaz, your son, and Jonathan, son of Abiathar. Different Jonathan. So I will wait the fords of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me. So Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem and they remained here. So David here remains true to his word that the house of God is in Jerusalem. And therefore, the ark should remain in Jerusalem too. The place of worship is there. And so he tells at least one of the priests that we've got to have a functioning temple. Although there's no temple here yet, it's just a tabernacle. But we've got to have a functioning faith that takes care of the ark. So that's what's going on. But David went up to the ascent of the Mount of Olives. Does that sound familiar? Weeping as he went, with his head covered and walking bare. All the people who were with him covered their heads and went up, weeping as they went. David was told that Ahithophel was among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, oh Lord, I pray you turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. So Ahithophel was David's counselor and confidant, and he also was Bathsheba's grandfather. And he has gone on the side of Absalom. So his most trusted person, counselor, has betrayed him. It's very interesting that David goes up to the Mount of Olives. Mount of Olives plays a big role in the life of Jesus. Mount of Olives is where the Transfiguration took place. It is at the base of it. It's where the Garden of Gethsemane is. It's also where he was taken up, his ascent into heaven.
From the Mount of Olives?
Mount of Olives.
Oh, okay. I thought it was.
And also the Mount of Olives is where Jesus stared out over the land of Jerusalem, crying, praying, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. How I wish I could take you under my wing. So, Mount of Olives is a big deal. And here we have the ancestor of Jesus doing this. Okay. When David came to the summit, not the one in Houston where Lakewood Church is now. Yeah, David wouldn't go to Lakewood. Where God was worshipped. Hushai, the Archite, came to meet him with his coat torn and the earth on his head. But David said to him, if you go on with me, you will be a burden. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I have been your father's servant in times past. So now I will be your servant. Then you will defeat for me the counsel of Ahithophel. The priests Zadok and Abiathar will be with you there. So whatever you hear from the king's house, tell it to the priests Zadok and Abiathar. Their two sons are with them there, Zadok's son Ahimaaz and Abiathar's son Jonathan. And by them you shall report to me everything you hear. So Hushai, David's friend, came into the city just as Absalom was entering Jerusalem. So David still has some trusted loyalists. Of course, the priests are there and they're loyal to David, but they're more loyal to God. But they know that David's in the right here. So he sends his servant back into town. Hey, work your way in. It's kind of like a spy. Work your way into the administration. Become my ears within the new kingship that's there. So, we're about to go into some really surprising stuff. Well, I say surprising, not surprising for how we've seen the history of Israel go, but we're about to get surprised. When David had passed a little beyond the summit, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, remember him? That's the remaining son of Saul, met him with a couple of donkeys saddled, carrying 200 loaves of bread, 100 bunches of raisins, 100 of summer fruits, and 1 skin of wine. The king said to Ziba, why have you brought these? Ziba answered, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride, the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine is for those who drink who faint in the wilderness. The king said, yeah, how would you like to drink after you're famished from walking for hours long? The king said, and where is your master's son? Ziba said to the king, he remains in Jerusalem, For he said, today the house of Israel will give me back my grandfather's kingdom.
Interesting.
Yeah. Then the king said to Ziba, all that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours. Ziba said, I do obeisance. Let me find favor in your sight, my lord the king. So, right, Mephibosheth, remember, he's eating at the king's table. David took care of him. This is Jonathan, his best friend who died. This is Jonathan's son, lame feet and all that. And all of a sudden, Mephibosheth is one of those who doesn't come out with David. Instead, he's looking to reclaim the kingdom of his grandfather Saul. But Ziba, who David had saved his life in order to protect Mephibosheth, to say, hey, you were the servant of Saul, or Jonathan, you're now going to be the servant of his son. And Ziba did that along with all of the other servants. Well, now Ziba is doing exactly what David did when he was visiting the front lines. When remember Goliath? David was taking food and drink to the soldiers on the front line. Well, that's what Ziba's doing here. So, this goes to show you that for everything that changes, everything stays the same. Huh? So,
More things change, more they remain the same.
verse 5. When King David came to Bahurim, a man of the family of the house of Saul came out, whose name was Shimei, son of Gera. He came out cursing. He threw stones at David and at all the servants of King David. Now all the people and all the warriors were on his right and on his left. Shimei shouted while he cursed, out, out, murderer, scoundrel. The Lord has avenged on all of you the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has given the kingdom into the hand of your son Absalom. See, disaster has overtaken you, for you are a man of blood. There is definitely still some bad blood between the house of Saul and the house of we don't remember this part of the story. I mean, we know the story of Absalom and his revolt against David, but we don't remember all this going on. We kind of skip over this stuff. So it kind of gives us an idea of the mentality of everyone as that revolt takes place, where everybody's minds.
Threw stones at David.
Right. Verse 9. Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord king? Let me go over and take off his head. But the king said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? Now remember, Zeruiah has 3 sons, Abishai, one other, and Joab, the other one that died, I can't remember his name. But Joab is also the son of Zeruiah. So this is like the sons of thunder, James and John. Okay, yeah. What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? If he is cursing because the Lord has said to him, curse David, who then shall say, why have you done so? David said to Abishai and to all his servants, my own son seeks my life. How much more now may this Benjaminite? Let him alone, let him curse, for the Lord has bidden him. It may be that the Lord will look on my distress and the Lord will repay me good for this cursing of me today. So David and his men went on the road while Shimei went along on the hillside opposite him and cursed as he went, throwing stones and flinging dust at him. The king and all the people who were with him arrived weary at Jordan, and there he refreshed us. So we're from ruin to refreshment here. So we end there today. Next week, division, defeat, and death. Ooh. Ooh. If you want to read ahead, you can figure out all of it. What?
You see,
Yeah,
it's all these names, all these people.
I need a chart.
I know, like everything like tree.
Oh, well, we can arrange that. I don't know if I can have it ready by next week. I started doing that as we first started the class, and it got cumbersome.
Yeah.
That's why.
Because there's generation upon generation upon generation that's still alive. I once tried to do it with from the beginning of creation and following the years thing.
Oh,
And it's interesting, whether it's literal or not, but if you take it from a literal point of view, God's promise to Noah held true, that none of his family would die. God, Noah's grandfather died the year of the flood, presumably just a few weeks or months prior. His father died years before that. All the other generations had already died. So David or Noah's ancestry had died. God kept his promise.
What do you mean he kept his promise? No one,
That none of Noah's family would die in the flood.
oh, in the flood. I
In
thought
the
you
flood.
did ever.
No. Well, technically, when we think, if you follow that, we all come from Adam and Eve. Of course, all of us kind of, when we say, we've all got a common ancestry, Adam and Eve, but that's really not the case. If we follow scripture, at least the flood account, we all come from one of
No.
Noah's sons.
Right.
So,
I came from Ham.
Ham.
Yeah.
Mhm,
No,
and
that's
yeah, Shem, Jam, and Ham. Shem, Ham, and Jacob. In case y'all wanted to know, Shem is the line where the Jews come from. That's where we get the word Semite. So anyway, and Japheth was his
It's just
close.
getting good.
I know.
Well, are there any questions or concerns or just conversations or got it?
I have a question about Mephibosheth,
Uh-huh.
because it said Mephibosheth's son went there. Or Mephibosheth, the servant. So David said, where's your master's son?
Mhm.
So that would be the son of Mephibosheth.
No, son of Jonathan.
Oh, so the Ziba was
Ziba
Jonathan.
was Jonathan's
Okay.
servant that David then put in charge of.
Okay.
Where is that?
It's close. Read
So family.
where it talks about Mephibosheth remaining in Jerusalem.
So it's a double question, but when they talk about sacrifice, they sacrifice.
Well, for vows and things, this would have been, could have been a number of things, depending on what the vow was. We don't know what the vow was. Other than him saying that he vowed to God that if he brought him back out of Geshur, that he would offer his sacrifices. So
Could be doves.
it could be a burnt offering. It could be a drink offering. Those were given to there's depending on what the vow was, which we don't know exactly. But a lot went into sacrifices, even if it was something like wheat, a grain sacrifice, something. A lot went into that. The priest had a lot of work to do. So that's why there were so many Levites. Because as people brought their people are doing this all day long, every day. And then special sacrifices throughout the week and year and stuff. They were constantly at work.
So over time, that's kind of just, we don't do that anymore.
With the temple, the Jews, with the temple destroyed, there is no temple right now. So the sacrificial period is ending. For Christians.
Red. Relation to God's and Jewish people that are gonna sacrifice. So. But they're looking for something. And they were talking about on the news the other day that they think the special cow has been bred.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't recall anything about a red cow. However, what I will say about cattle, oxen in Judah, oxen, bulls, they are representative of Israel's strength. It has to do with horns. That's why whenever you hear the word horn in the Old Testament, it has to do with their power, with their strength. The horns on the altar, that's that representative of the power. So as Christians, there was one sacrifice made for all, and so we don't follow a sacrificial
Okay,
element.
thank you.
Okay. Well, anything else? Anybody else want to talk about grilling? Really? Sacrificing,
Oh.
Yeah, it's fun, you know, but for all the good that happened to Mephibosheth, for him to, you know, it seems like he held this grudge, that he reaped the benefits of what David was offering. But then David's son said Absalom, and I'm telling y'all now, that for David, things do not get any easier from this point out. Things start to go downhill from David.
The more kids he had, the more problems he had.
Like everybody, I stopped at one. I got no problem. It's we end up with jealousy, but if you and y'all all heard this from a lot of different preachers, a lot of different people, that the Jewish people relied, you know, they trusted in the hierarchy, you know, the line passing on to the oldest son, at least the power passing on to the youngest. And almost invariably, it never did for those that were important. It was always this, you know, a younger child. And David, he's got multiple kids. Solomon's his youngest. And Solomon's going to end up taking the throne. Now, that's not without trouble. I mean, Absalom here is revolting, usurping. We're going to see another son, Ahijah, being actually crowned by his group of followers at the same time that Solomon is being crowned. So it wasn't easy. And of course, this is all happening as David died. You know, David is dead. So, but he had to have known, you know, what was happening with just seeing what happened with Amnon and absolutely. These are his oldest kids.
He shouldn't have had so many wives.
Well,
Yeah.
it you know, they did that in order to make sure that the line was carried on. And their mindset is that God told God told them through Moses to propagate and you know, perpetuate it. Well, that's got plenty of Irish protection. Okay, well, if that's not all, or if that's all, we'll get out of here. Anybody want to join us for choir? We're doing one of the most difficult songs we've ever done in our life. It just has Karen laughs.